Ryan Sullivan.
Good morning.
Hello.
How's everyone doing?
Good.
Great morning.
All right. Well, we are thrilled to be here this morning and just want to start off by giving a big thanks to our friends at the Kresge Foundation for giving us the opportunity to have an exciting dialogue today with some incredible leaders in the Metro Detroit area in public space. Our goal today is for you to walk out of this room more well-informed about public spaces in our community, what they mean to different community members, and importantly, how public spaces can help to move our state and our region forward, where we'll be connecting public space to some of the themes of the conference today. So first and foremost, I'm going to turn it over to each panelist. Leona, we'll start with you to share a minute or two about your organization and some of the exciting things that you have coming up this year.
Oh my goodness, I've never talked about myself in a minute or two, but we'll try. So great to be here this morning with my colleagues and friends to talk about public space. So I serve as the executive director of the Joe Louis Greenway Partnership. The partnership is a nonprofit that serves the Joe Louis Greenway, and if you haven't heard of it, you'll hear about it today. It's a 29-mile recreational path that the city of Detroit, Dearborn, Hamtramck, and that goes through Highland Park are building. It's really a large-scale transportation project that's happening in our state, in our region, that has been focused on connecting our beautiful riverfront on the south to our neighborhoods in the north. There are about 170,000 residents in those cities that live within a mile of this path, and it's bringing more public space and green space into our neighborhoods. And so we're really excited about its opportunity for economic development, access to green space, and just overall health and wellness of our community.
Awesome, thank you. Amy.
Good morning, my name is Amy McMillan and I lead the Huron-Clinton Metroparks. The Metroparks are a regional park system. We are in 5 counties throughout the state of Michigan, well, not here in southeastern Michigan, they are in southeastern Michigan, Wayne, Washtenaw, Oakland, Macomb, and Livingston counties. We have 13 parks that encompass 25,000 acres of public park property in southeastern Michigan. And within those 25,000 acres, we have over 400 miles of trails. Nature trails, biking trails, hiking trails, trails that connect park to park, and are working to connect trail system to trail system throughout our community. We have over 7.5 million visitors to the Metroparks each and every year, and currently we're really focused in on our work in connecting our parks to one another, our partnerships throughout the community, including with the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. We are so excited about the upcoming opening of Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Centennial Park, which will include the first physical Metro Parks in the 85-year history of the Huron-Clinton Metroparks.
Meagan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Meagan Elliott. I'm the president and CEO of the Belle Conservancy. For those of you not familiar with Belle, it is a 982-acre park, so slightly larger than Central Park, also designed by Olmsted, who designed Central Park, and it's an island, so it's nestled in the middle of the Detroit River. It's absolutely a beloved space. We have about 5.5 million visitors annually, so the only state park to see more visitation than that is Niagara Falls in the entire country. So it is something we're applauding. So we just have so many different beloved spaces on that island, including the beach that you see here. And an exciting project that we've been working on lately is something called the Belle Commons. So we have these incredible institutional assets all around the island that are actually very close proximity to one another. But just the way that the island has evolved over time, folks kind of get in their car, drive over the bridge, drive right to one destination, and then get back in their car and leave. What we're working to create is a world-class asset where you can get out of your car and linger between all these amazing spaces and kind of upgrade them to be kind of more responsive to the modern needs of world-class parks. So we're geographically nestled right in the center of the river, but also the kind of ring of Metro Parks as well as the ring of the Joe Louis Greenway. So I'm just excited to be up here talking with all these wonderful folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I am Ryan Sullivan. I'm the CEO of the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. And I think it's important that as we kick off this session and this panel, that we address somewhat of the elephant in the room. For many of those that were here at the conference last year, you'll recall that a major scandal that involved the Riverfront Conservancy, the news broke on the island. And actually, I'm going to read a quote from Dan Howes in the Detroit News just yesterday. "A year ago, Detroit's business and political leadership gathered on Mackinac Island under a cloud of scandal engulfing the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy, a swindle that stole more than $40 million from the favored nonprofit and sentenced its CFO to federal prison." So, I think it's important to acknowledge that, and that we're not trying to hide from anything as an organization. And sitting here today, 1 year later, we're incredibly proud of the progress that we have made as an organization, as an institution, to move the riverfront forward. The promise that that our organization was founded on to the community has been upheld for this entire year. Not a single program was canceled. Not a single day of security or trash cleanup or anything like that was missed, despite all the challenges that we were going through. We've taken a number of actions to strengthen our organization for the future. We have our incoming board chair, Sandy Pierce, here with us today. We're looking forward to her leadership as part of the organization. And building on what Amy said, we have the incredible opening of Ralph C. Wilson Park that is happening this fall in October. We cannot wait to open the gates, so to speak, to everyone in this room, all of your families and our entire community. It's something for us to all be proud of. And none of this would have happened in the last year if it were not for the incredible support of folks like those in this room, our team and our staff, as well as our committed volunteers and other community members. So I just wanted to open the remarks today with kind of a bookend of where we were last year and all the progress that we have made to bring us forward to this year. And with that, thank you. With that, I'd like to kind of kick off the panel in talking about the connectivity between our spaces, both physically as well as between us as leaders and friends of these organizations. And one of the things, some of you mentioned the annual visitation to your parks and public spaces in your opening remarks. But for the audience, collectively, the visitation to all the spaces that we represent as leaders see more than 15 million annual visits. So if you think about our state with a population of 10 million, it's growing. I know that's what we're here to celebrate. That's 150% of the population of our entire state visits our spaces at least once per year. And if you add up all the annual attendance of all the professional Detroit sports teams, it's 7 years worth of attendance to all of those stadiums that come to our spaces each and every single year. Just to put it into context in terms of how many lives these spaces touch and how important they are to our communities. So let's talk about connectivity. Leona, maybe we'll start with you. You had the map up there and showcased the 29 miles, and you provide an important linkage to both the Riverfront and Belle Isle. So maybe just spend a little bit of time talking about that connectivity and what that means.
Yeah, so for the better part of 20 years, residents in the region, the city of Detroit, really advocating for more trails, but really trails that were more than about recreation, right? That were about how do we connect residents in the city to the things that they need to do for their life, to connect residents to jobs, to schools. And so there was a really pivotal time where there was some resources, some funding that allowed the construction of the Joe Louis to really happen. A lot of the leaders from the city of Detroit, Highland Park, Hamtramck, and Dearborn were able to come together and say the time is now to build this project. So you have the construction. But even before that, you had this really robust framework that the city of Detroit embarked on, Meagan being one of the leaders of that effort, that was really rooted in community. So the city of Detroit went out over 160 meetings, thousands of residents talking about the needs of residents in public space and also the needs of getting around. And then we have this beautiful riverfront. Right, so if you're familiar with the city of Detroit, you can go to the riverfront and you can experience it, but there's a point where you get to the neighborhoods and you kind of feel like, what more could this be? And so the first time in our history, in our city, there's an opportunity and an actual, real, tangible project that is taking the riverfront and connecting it to the neighborhoods. But it is rooted in community voice. It is rooted on what residents wanted to see and what residents wanted to get out of this project. And so now, today, you can go out to the Joe Louis Greenway. It doesn't look like this cartoon map, which is very cute, but you can go out to the Greenway And you can see the connectivity because residents in the city of Detroit, residents in Highland Park, Hamtramck, and Dearborn, they get to go to a beautiful Riverfront. They get to go to a beautiful Belle Isle, but they also get to go to a beautiful Greenway right in their backyard. And so when we talk about abundance, when we talk about connectivity, we're talking about giving residents options, giving them and, not or, right? And we're going to talk more about this, but connecting people to resources, opportunity, and then what we see is like hope, right? And so there's a connection to hope in our neighborhoods. So the city of Detroit doing all this investment and cleaning up. Now you're seeing residents being able to invest in their neighborhoods. So I could, clean up my front yard all day long or my backyard, but if there's, 40,000 tons of trash back there, what is that going to do for me? And so residents are now seeing more collaboration with the city and a focus on cleaning up neighborhoods that have been, kind of disinvested in for decades. And so there's so many levels and nuance of connection that this project is bringing.
That's awesome. Amy, you spoke about the Metroparks and how you have a number of parks in a number of different communities. So really the Metroparks kind of weaves together various counties in the Southeast Michigan community. Can you talk about that connection with the Metroparks regionally as well as in the city with what you mentioned earlier at Ralph C. Wilson Park?
Yeah, absolutely. So 85 years ago this year, the legislature came together. The entire legislature came together 85 years ago and agreed to create a regional park system, which is known now as the Huron-Clinton Metroparks. And then a couple of years later, the people of southeastern Michigan voted yes on a millage to fund both the creation of those parks and the operation of those parks. And the vision behind that was to have a connected series of parks that formed an outer ring around the city so that land would be preserved in perpetuity for the public. If you've ever been to one of our parks, if you go to Stony Creek or you go to Kensington or Metro Beach, some of you might know it now as Lake St. Clair, it's hard to imagine that people had the vision to preserve this property. Today, I'm confident those parks would be subdivisions if that vision had not existed. And the thought was that eventually those parks would all be connected to one another by a motorway. There are a lot of reasons that didn't happen, and now we really envision that our parks will be connected by a greenway, park to park, but also trail system to trail system. So as we have planned the trail system out, it will connect to the Macomb Orchard Trail, to the Belle Isle, to the Iron Bell Trail, to the Joe Louis Greenway project so that people can come from outside of the city into the city and from the city outside into that ring of amazing parks.
And Meagan, I'm hoping that you can build on that and we can kind of zoom in to the Commons project that you were talking about, because you're talking about connecting different cultural assets within a specific geographic area. Could you speak to that and
Sure.
what some of the motivation for that?
Yeah, so the motivation, just like a lot of the projects that we're talking about, all came from residents. So, residents of the city of Detroit that own this beautiful space all came together as part of the Belle Isle Multimodal Mobility Study. A bit of a mouthful, but that study was basically hearing folks saying, we want to get out of our cars, we want to use the island differently, so how do we do that? With support and partnership from many folks in the audience today, we were able to bring on a design firm to basically start to put that to paper and design basically a public square at the heart of all of these assets that gives you all these visual cues to say, oh, I can walk from the conservatory formal gardens to the Udolph Garden. The aquarium, which is the oldest operating aquarium in America, is a 1-minute walk from the Dawson Great Lakes Museum. Our partners with the Detroit Historical Society. And folks don't have that mental map, so they think they have to get back in their car and go all the way around the Strand. And we can use the space differently. So that's kind of a microcosm of the broader connectivity that we all hope to achieve as a region. And I will say that 1 in 4 Detroiters don't have access to an automobile. And I think that is what underscores the connectivity across our spaces even more. So we have the Ralph C. Wilson Trail that goes around the perimeter of the island, connecting through the Uniroyal site, connecting onto the Riverfront, up through the Joe Louis Greenway. And this is really the big picture vision for what our region can be in terms of a world-class destination for public spaces.
That's amazing. And I want to also talk about the connectivity amongst people and communities here. So as I said in the opening, I've been in this role for just under a year now, and my entire career up until this point has been in the private sector. So I'm new to the nonprofit world. I'm new to the public space world professionally. I've been a user of these spaces for many years. But one of the things that I've noticed very quickly is how connected we all are as leaders. We share, some of us sit on each other's boards. We're part of whether it's formal or informal networks. Meagan, I think you have a really interesting perspective to share on this, given some of your background prior to coming into your current role. Maybe you could speak to that.
Sure. Prior to this role, I was the Deputy CFO for the City of Detroit. I see our current CFO in the audience here, Tanya Stoudemire. And prior to that, Chief Parks Planner. So the last 10 years in public service at the city government level, which gave me a really interesting perspective on kind of how all of these coalitions come together and what governance really looks like. We worked to actually found the Joe Louis Greenway Partnership and figuring out what is the right balance there in terms of scope and in relation to government. We are so lucky to have found Leona to lead the organization. She's done an incredible job. And I think that with each of the kind of different structures and kind of governance situations that come together for our various entities, they're all a slightly different mix, but it's all about coalition building. I think that we have to have all of these levers in place so that in times when we have, for example, tremendous need on the public sector side, like for example during COVID, we knew we could count on private sector support to keep our spaces beautiful and well maintained and clean. And that ended up being such a critical asset, especially during the pandemic, to have these vibrant public spaces. But I think at any given time, you need to figure out if this resource depletes, how do we have this other backbone over here? So I think we're all kind of trying to do that in different ways.
Yeah, let's go a little bit deeper on that and transition to the next topic and talking about the importance of investing in these public spaces. Each of you in your opening remarks talked a little bit about the governance model for your organization, how it was set up, how you're funded and sustained. But Meagan, as you touched on, during COVID, a lot of visitation to public spaces spiked. And I think collectively as a society, as a region, as a community, we have greater awareness and appreciation now for just how valuable these spaces are in the lives of all of us on a daily basis. Amy, you've had a long career in public space in a number of different settings, and I think you can speak really passionately to the importance of investing and maintaining these spaces in addition to the upfront capital to create them. So we'd love to hear some perspective from you on that.
Thank you. I have been doing this a long time. I started my career in my hometown of Midland when I was 14 years old, working in a playground program with kids with developmental disabilities that my cousin attended because I wanted to get to know my cousin better. And I worked, I was the head of a 2-person department in Superior Charter Township. I was the director in the city of Ypsilanti for 9 years and in Flint and Genesee County for just shy of 18 years. All very under-resourced communities. But I always had a goal to come back to the Metroparks. I was an intern at the Metroparks in college. And one of the things that the Metroparks has that allows us to stand apart in many ways is that we have a consistent source of funding. The Metroparks have a perpetual millage. It was set at 0.25 by the legislature when we were created. It's been eroded away a little bit by Medley over the years. We can talk about that all day in another session. But it does give us a foundation on which to build. But that's still only about 60% of our budget. So the rest of our budget comes from our business operations. If you've ever played golf at one of our facilities, we have extraordinary golf courses. That's our third highest source of revenue. And that model allows us to operate really world-class parks. I will tell you, you will never go to a public bathroom that is cleaner than a Metroparks bathroom, and we take that responsibility very seriously. And we've done very well with that over the years, but still, it requires partnerships. It requires outside funding. It requires an entire community to move our system forward and to keep it moving forward. We have partnerships at every level. We have been a proud partner of the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy since I came to the Metroparks in 2018. We have partnerships that are big and small throughout the communities. A few years back, we started a program called Everyone in the Pool. And we are using that program and partnering with local communities to teach every kid in southeastern Michigan how to swim and be safe in the water, because over half of our kids don't know how to swim. And so they are missing out on this incredible opportunity. So we both partner with outside organizations to bring in resources to the Metroparks and partner with outside resources to share, outside partners to share the resources of the Metroparks, because they all have to come together in a really deliberate way to serve the people of southeastern Michigan. Parks, I've been in public parks for a really long time, as I said, and part of my career was spent with people talking about public parks as being a frill, something that was not deserving of attention in a public budget. And I will say to you, one of the things that the pandemic has really done has brought into incredibly sharp focus the value of those public spaces for our physical health, for our mental health, for economic development. If we want people to stay in the state of Michigan, if we want people to be healthy in the state of Michigan, if we want people to move to the state of Michigan, we have to have quality public spaces. We have to have extraordinary trail systems. And so this is not a frill. This should be a basic expectation that every single Michigander should have of their everyday life.
And Amy, if I can double click on that, not only is, well-designed, beautifully maintained public space oftentimes look as a nice to have or a frill, it's often determined who gets to have it,
100%.
right? And so where do Greenways and Belle Isles and riverfronts and beautiful riverfronts, where are those in our planning? And so when I think about the Joe Louis Greenway, it is a decision on people to say it is deserving for us all. And so, the idea that public space is something that is, based on your race or your socioeconomic status, whether it's maintained, important thing for us is we're connected to this, amazing 18-year history, Riverfront that is award winning. Well, it's important that we have a source of revenue that says when you get to Mac after you leave the DeQuinder Cut, you don't feel like you have stepped off into a place where there is trash everywhere and it's not maintained, and we don't have the resources to ensure that there is a continuity of that. And so when we talk about these partnerships and sources of revenue, it's so important for us to, and Meagan, says this all the time, that, governments aren't designed to do it all. Right? And that's where these partnerships, these public-private partnerships that we talk about are so important, because, part of the P in that public-private partnership is the people, right? So the taxpayers who said this is what we want and this is what we want our tax dollars being utilized for. The private entities saying we're going to come in and support, and the public saying we are here to make sure that there's a basic level, that we are using those tax dollars from the people responsibly. And so the idea that there are some neighborhoods that get this is something that in our work that we're saying that doesn't exist. Everybody deserves it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hear, hear. So I want to transition and talk about the environment a bit in this conversation. We were just talking a lot about the human aspect, right? And how these spaces connect us as people, they connect neighborhoods, they provide greater access, and so forth. But, what if water quality could be here on the stage today? What if air quality could be here? What if other species could be here talking and representing their voice in this conversation? Each of the spaces that are represented here today contributes to a positive environmental impact to these constituencies in different ways. So maybe talk about some of the environmental impact of each of your spaces, and maybe Meagan, we can start with you at Belle Isle.
Sure. I often think that what's good for nature is good for people too. And I think that really grounds me in, every day being on Belle Isle and getting to see folks connecting with the waterways. We're right, at the heart of the Great Lakes system. It's the reason why people come out. They want the fresh breeze in their face. They want to see the water, touch the water. They want to, hear the bird song. And so I feel like those things are, have huge mental and physical health impacts. And so we try and lift that up on the island. one of the things that we do that's a really kind of a low lift in terms of all the things we could be doing from an environmental standpoint is each year we remove about 6,000 pounds of trash from the island, and that's just things that blow out of cans, that get into the waterway, and then have huge ecosystem impacts for the wildlife that are there. So we have a core of about 1,000 volunteers, 100 of which are so consistent that people think that they're employees of the Belle Isle Conservancy. And so that's one of the kind of immediate impacts we have from an environmental standpoint. But we're also doing a lot of work to figure out how we kind of change our relationship to the water system. We have a lot of, very historic buildings that have pipes that connect back to the CSO and the mainland. We should be resilient as an island, so we have some big goals for improving that in the future. And again, a lot of habitat restoration work that we do along the shoreline and in the wet mesic forest in partnership with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. So, so that's just a sliver of, I think, all the things we could be doing on Belle Isle.
Amy?
So I think one of the critical pieces that we do at the Metroparks, in addition to managing all of this incredible natural area in our parks, less than half of our park space is developed. So most of it is in its natural condition, which means that it does a great job in filtering water runoff into our system. It does a great job in improving the air quality and maintaining the natural resources, the wildlife, the flora and the fauna that is there. 2 years ago, we began a deliberate effort to focus in on climate action within the Metroparks and in connection to our communities. And one of the incredibly impactful pieces of work that we do is with our interpretive department. We have a nationally award-winning interpretive staff who go into schools throughout the entire region each and every day, all year long. We have tens of thousands of school kids who visit the Metroparks each year and learn about the ecosystem of the Metroparks, who learn about how they can contribute to preserving the natural environment. Our job at the Metroparks, our mission at the Metroparks, is to bring the benefits of parks and recreation to the people of Southeast and East Michigan, all the people, all the time. And so we work to do that at every level of our community, whether it's being in a classroom coming out. We do programs in communities and parks that are not our own, teaching people how to build rain gardens. We advocate tirelessly for public spaces, whether they're Metroparks or not. It is a virtuous cycle. Everything is connected to everything else. And so when we advocate for public spaces, it uplifts everyone.
Yeah, I think that's great. So, what I would say for the Joe Louis Greenway, about 9 miles of it sits on a former rail line. And if you think about this rail line that has been inactive for decades, and then you go back and think about how our cities have been over-industrialized with, commercial buildings and manufacturing flanked by residential homes. So this rail line really runs in the backyard, if you can imagine this. A lot of people in this room have been on my tour, so you've seen it. But it literally runs through the backyard. And so just imagine, decades of raising a family and living in a neighborhood with a train at a point of time that was running in your backyard. And then begin to imagine about what we know about trains and what we know these trains are oftentimes carrying. How much contamination do you think was spilling off of those trains over years that may have gone undetected? And then you think about now the rail line is not active. What about the dumping that's happened in these backyards where these families are? Think about how these children are growing up. There's tires, cars, boats, who knows, that has been dumped in these neighborhoods. So now with just the sheer construction of the Joe Louis Greenway, and every time if you bring me here, I'm gonna say this, if one of the only things that the Joe Louis Greenway did was clean up the environment in the neighborhood, we could call it a success. Because now families get access to not trash and debris and dump tires. I mean, there's a number out there. We got 30,000 tires that have been removed from this section of the Joe Louis Greenway, right? So when we talk about the impact, yes, there's so much more that we're working on. We want families to experience the economic impact of this project. We want to make sure that residents are able to live in place and benefit from this project. Home values go up. Jobs are brought by way of this project. The residents who live near the Greenway are able to benefit. But we also want to make sure that they can live in a neighborhood that is clean, that has fresh air, that is not polluted, that is not dumped, and that is well maintained. And so yes, there are things like stormwater infrastructure that's necessary. Residents wanted that. Residents said, we want stormwater infrastructure in our neighborhood. You know, there have been, 50, 500-year floods, right? So we want to make sure that our neighborhoods are protected. There are bioswales. There's trees that are being planted that is reducing the temperature of our neighborhoods that is proliferated with concrete everywhere. There are native plantings along the Greenway. And all of this was on a rail line. And so when we talk about the importance of public space, when we talk about the importance of like big, audacious ideas, the Joe Louis Greenway, the Riverfront, Huron Metroparks, Belle are examples of these big, audacious ideas that happen in our state and our region, and why we all come together to make sure that we maintain them and that they're available for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's incredible to hear. Thank you. It's incredible to hear the unique contributions that each of the spaces makes to the environment, and what's, the importance of the Joe Louis Greenway for those residents is different than, say, the Metroparks, for example, but both contribute to the health and well-being of our communities, of our waterways, of our air quality in different ways. And I think that's incredibly impactful and important for everyone in the audience to take away. So let's transition back and talking about the human side of things and the human environment. One of the things that Metro Detroit is known for that's not so great is that we are one of the most segregated communities or cities by different measures over time. Yet one of the things that's incredibly inspiring to me in public spaces is how open and welcoming our public spaces are to all. Public spaces are a place where we can go as individuals, with our families, with our communities, and see people and interact with and build community with people from all walks of life. So what's something that each of you would contribute to talk about how public spaces can play a role in ensuring that these spaces are welcoming to all in our communities?
So I'm going to speak about the Metroparks. The Metroparks were not always known as a place that everybody was welcome, or that everybody felt welcomed or safe. And so it takes intentionality. It would be great if we lived in such a world where people could just show up and that automatically happened. But it really takes effort and focus. And at the Metroparks, we are aware of our history. We are aware of the experiences that some people have had over a period of time. And we work really hard on our outreach effort. We work really hard to build those partnerships and those relationships, and that takes place over time. We're making progress, but it is something that we are always going to have to focus on and always be really deliberate about the work that we do to make certain that if people are not able to come to the Metroparks, because most folks are going to have to get in their car and drive to the Metroparks for about a 20-minute drive. That's the goal of each of the Metroparks, to be about a 20-minute drive for each person. If we can't make it possible for everyone to get to a Metropark, we want to make sure that the Metroparks are in communities. They are in neighborhood parks. They are part of partnerships on the Riverfront, on the Joe Louis Greenway. They are in the schools. And so that is the commitment that we have made to Southeastern Michigan to really live up to, pardon me, that promise to serve all the people all their lives.
And I can speak firsthand to the interpretive programming that I've experienced with my own children, and it really makes a big difference, bringing that experience to folks that may not, be able to make it out to a Metro Park, at least on a regular basis. Leona or Meagan?
Well, if I could just add something, not from the Belle Isle perspective, but lifting up in my former life the city park system. So we have about just over 300 neighborhood parks across the city of Detroit, 150 of those that are especially beloved. And when I first started as the chief parks planner was the year that the agreement got negotiated with the state to take over managing Belle Isle. So I got to see firsthand what it took and also how beneficial it was to have that partnership with the state investing in Belle Isle so that we could take those resources on the city side and invest them across the city. So the main goal of that effort and a 10-year-long initiative was to get every Detroiter access to a high-quality park within a 10-minute walk from their front door. So when we talk about this connectivity of a system, it's not just the big signature spaces, but it's also the space you walk out your front door and get to. And that can be the thing that lifts up your entire neighborhood that everyone's proud of, that maybe your neighborhood is named after that park. But if it's not well maintained, it's the drag on the entire neighborhood, and it's the shame of the neighborhood, and it makes everyone feel worse about their day-to-day lives. So, that's the other stakeholder that I want to lift up here in this ecosystem of all of our connected spaces, because having that goal of equitable access is so important for the space right outside your front door, as much as it is for your kind of regional destination
100%.
when you go somewhere else.
I would, for us, we're founded in 22. I came on in 23. I mean, it's me and two other people, okay? We have 125 days of programming this year. And one of the things I can tell you that I'm most proud of with my team is, where the Joe Louis Greenway trailhead is located is at this intersection of Dearborn, Southwest Detroit. So if you know what I'm saying, then that also connects you to cultural differences, right? So you have a large Middle Eastern population, a large Latinx and Hispanic population, a large Black population. So, one of the things that I think is important to us is what we spend our money on is what's important. And out of the gate, we knew that we had to provide translation services. So we had to make sure that all of our invitations were translated, were in English, were in Spanish, and were in Arabic. Like, that's just a standard. There's no way we can communicate to our community and say that everybody is welcome if you can't even register for an event. And so we make sure that that's there. We also, at a lot of our signature events, have actual translators on site. And even, depending, we then found out we had a large deaf and hard of hearing population. So then we have sign language translation. And there was an event that we did last year, our Pink on the Greenway event, which was our first breast cancer walk. It was phenomenal. But to have this experience where we had a Spanish translator, an Arabic translator, and an ASL translator, which was nuts, okay? But everybody was able to experience the event in a way that made them feel like we did this intentionally for you and you're welcome. And so as we continue to program public space, one of the ways that's important for us to do that in a way that says we are serving all of the communities is we're looking for them. We're always asking who is not here, right? Who, and are they here and we just don't see them? And we're really trying to find a way to pull them out and tell us what you need and how can we make this experience more enjoyable for you and your family. We use, a lot of times inclusive can be polarizing. I would just want to make it enjoyable, right? And if you are enjoying yourself, then we don't have to use language that might make you feel one way or you feel another way. Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, but I think what you're touching on there, is incredibly important. And I think about going down to the riverfront or even out to the trailhead that you're mentioning where I went with my family. You go to these places and you hear people speaking foreign languages, on a daily basis. I mean, I can go on the riverfront sometimes and hear 3 different foreign languages in a 1-mile walk. Where else are we going in our daily lives? As every single person in this room, where else are you going where that's happening?
Yeah.
I mean, I would challenge us that there really aren't many places, if at all, other than these public spaces that do truly bring together the entire fabric of our communities in a way that's welcoming, that's inclusive, and that lifts everyone up together as a community. So let's talk about that and maybe bridge to one of the themes of the conference, which is about talent attraction and retention. And the diversity, the inclusivity that these spaces invite and welcome and build, I would make a strong argument, is a huge factor in talent attraction and retention. These are the things that people want to see when they are looking to make investments in their business or move their family or whatever it might be. So can each of you talk about how that diversity and inclusivity can relate to talent attraction and retention, or maybe there's been some personal anecdotes that you can share about that?
I think one of the things that connects all of our public spaces and for, across the world really, if you ask someone what is the most special place to them or a place that represents their city, and they kind of close their eyes and think about that, it's almost always a public space. It's not always a park, but it's usually a park. Mm-hmm. I think for Detroiters, a lot of times that I hear all across the city, when people close their eyes and imagine Detroit, they think about Belle Isle. And that is something that is unique to each of our cities, right? That really you can't get anywhere else. You get a lot of chain restaurants across the city. They all look the same, a lot of different spaces that mimic one another, but our public spaces are truly unique. And that is so valuable. Particularly, I think, I talk all the time about third place. So for those of you that may not have heard that concept, the idea is basically, your first place is your home life, your second place is your work, and the third place is where you go to find community. For a lot of people now, first and second place are collapsed. You have a Zoom screen that you're in front of in your home. So you have even more reduced opportunities to engage with the public, those kind of informal interactions that expose you to maybe diverse opinions, diverse lifestyles, or really just anything that help you kind of navigate with flexibility your life, right? And understand how you're part of a collective. And so to me, that's everything. I mean, I feel like we are stewarding these places so that they can be that meaningful third place, and they can be the place that you close your eyes and think about as like your home.
We hear that in a really, in a really practical way when we hire people at the Metroparks. Probably the last half dozen people that we have hired in full-time positions have come from out of state, and they're coming back to Michigan. They're coming back to Michigan because they want to be with their families, and they think Michigan is a great place to live. And that is 100% connected to the public spaces that we have. We do hear those memories all the time. I remember going to Metro Beach with my kids. I remember the Tot Lot at Metro Beach. I go to Kensington with my family every single year. This is my favorite place to run. This is my favorite place to bird watch. These are the things that I have learned about nature over time, and they are always connected to public spaces and parks. And so when we are talking about talent attraction, we have to reinvest in our public spaces because they have to be world class. They have to be great trail systems. They have to be connected to other trail systems. They have to have that experience in the commons so you can get from one place to another. And none of that happens by magic. All of it happens by intention, and all of it happens through investment.
Yeah, so for the Joe Louis Greenway, I'm seeing it in a couple different facets. One is a focus on talent attraction, but really small business, right? So how do we use this project as a catalyst to encourage entrepreneurs and small businesses to bring their businesses to neighborhoods and to provide some of those necessary amenities that walkable, beautiful, well-lived communities need, right? Grocery stores, laundromats, all of those things that a community needs. And so for me, one side of that is, how do we get small businesses to really want to root themselves and nestle themselves in close proximity to the Joe Louis Greenway as an anchor, right? That's going to be bringing in visitors, that's going to be bringing in people coming to the Greenway, but also that is connecting residents to these things. So that's one part. And then, the other piece is workforce and talent attraction, we see in Detroit and in the region, again, Meagan said this, 1 in 4 individuals don't have access to an automobile for a number of different reasons. We know the cost of car ownership is only going up. And so to have a trail that you can get on in your neighborhood, maybe have access to Mogo, bike share, have your own bike or scooter, and you can go non-motorized from your home in the neighborhood in Midwest Tireman or in Highland Park, and you can go safely to your job in downtown Detroit, right? So we're talking about, yes, access to jobs non-motorized, but we're also talking about safety.
Right? I think it's important to note that this is not theoretical, what you're saying.
No.
This is happening right now, today. I can say it definitively because I see it with my own eyes, especially on the Greenways on the east side. This is actively happening, Dennis Archer Greenway, DeQuinder Cut, and just imagine extrapolating that even further with the completion of the Joe Louis Greenway in time.
And we think about, oftentimes I think what we think about Greenways and we say, you hear this anecdote, I was on this Canadian podcast, and you think about this white guy on a $5,000 bike and he's just pedaling along. But in reality for us, these are people trying to get to the things that they need to live their lives, right?
Grocery stores.
That white guy too, right? He's got to get to work, right? And so does the mother, and so does all of these people. And so we want to unpack this stereotype that we have of greenways and trails and paths that we're really reinventing. And we get calls from all around the country trying to benchmark our projects. They're trying to understand and learn. Number one, how did the Joe Louis Greenway, how did you guys build so much in such a quick time? I don't even know. The city is building this thing at a breakneck speed. Dearborn is working on their section. Hamtramck is working on their section, and so there's collaboration. But we're talking about trails that are allowing people the option, right, in our region and the access to get to the life that they want to live.
So if folks in the audience do have questions on the blue cards, please pass them up. We'll get to those in a moment. And we're coming in on about 13 minutes left. So I want to close out with the questions that I had prepared in advance, building on diversity, inclusivity, and how that relates to talent attraction and retention, and talk a little bit more about how public spaces can contribute and support overall economic development efforts in our state and in our region.
I mean, when I always talk about the Joe Louis Greenway, I was having this conversation earlier this week, or 1 week. But, there are a lot of things that you can invest in. You can invest in housing, you can invest in all of these things. But what we have seen, what the data shows us across the country, is that investing in public space is an investment that catalyzes all of these other things. And so when you invest in a Belle Isle, when you invest in a riverfront, the numbers, whether it's in San Antonio, whether it's in Atlanta, those investments have spurred other things, have spurred housing investment, has spurred small business, has spurred entrepreneurship, investment in infrastructure and education. And so when we talk about why choose to invest in public space, is not just because we want beautiful public space, but we want one investment that can catalyze so many others.
Yeah, and those are things that can be measured locally too, right? So we always, I think a lot of times we talk about, San Antonio or the High Line in New York or the Beltway in Atlanta. But these things happen in Michigan too. And some of them happened in Michigan first. And there are things that we have to be consistent in the way that we measure. Every few years, the Metroparks, for example, has worked with the Trust for Public Land. And we can tell you what our economic impact is at the Metroparks, because when everybody comes through one of our gates, before they come through, they are picking up something at the grocery store. They are visiting a local gas station. They are buying a bike from a bike shop. Plenty of ice cream around the Metroparks and every trail system. We can measure the impact on the economy of having cleaner air, of how your housing prices increase, how the value of your home increases based on the proximity to a well-maintained park. And so the data is there to show it. Certainly it's us here today being great advocates for our system, but the numbers are clear and compelling. There is a tremendous impact on the economy, and for that impact to be perpetuated, for it to grow, the investment has to take place consistently in those public spaces.
Anything to add?
Oh, I could talk about this all day, I think.
Right? Yeah.
All right. One of the things I reached out to a few folks that work in economic development when preparing for this panel, and one of the themes that I heard from them was, hey, how can we include public spaces more when we're doing economic development activities? If it's giving tours to people or showcasing it for new hires and things of that nature. So for anyone in the audience that's working in economic development, how can we build bridges together between the public space community and the economic development community so we can better tell that story together and achieve shared outcomes for our state and our region?
An email or a phone call would get you that. I mean, I think if anyone is working in economic development and you are not tied in to the people who are leading your public spaces, you're really doing a disservice to your project, because in many cases, we are one of the major attractions that's drawing in, whether it's business. I mean, large-scale companies want to know, where are the parks, right? Because if I'm bringing 1,000 or 5,000 employees, my employees have families and they want parks, right? They want schools, they want basic things, and email or phone call.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to transition now to some audience questions for roughly the last 10 minutes here. This one is addressed to the Joe Louis Greenway, but I think all of us can speak to it in some way or another. It says, how are you working with surrounding communities to ensure that they're able to leverage the benefits of the Greenway and not be displaced by increasing property values? What was done on the planning process to help address this?
Great question. So a couple of things. So the framework plan that the city of Detroit embarked on prior to construction was 2 years. And it was a lot of engagement around that particular type of question and many others. And what we see in Detroit and a lot of the other cities is, Detroit has some policies that prevent property taxes from jumping up so high. We have some partners in the room that are investing in pilots to really help to ensure that residents have the opportunity to go from renters to home ownership, that there's an intentionality about ensuring that folks can stay in place. And so that work is happening in parallel right now. One of the case studies that we learned from, this project learned from, was the Atlanta Beltline. We studied that a great deal to understand what were a lot of the negative impacts, where did the people go, and how do we mitigate that here in Detroit. And while Detroit is a little ways in terms of the economics behind Atlanta, we want to make sure that our residents, our cities, the people who living have a head start, have the opportunity to ensure that if they want to stay, they can stay, and they have the choice and the option. So a lot of that is built into the framework prior to any construction happening that you didn't see in a lot of projects like this around the country.
Amy, maybe you can address that in a slightly different way. I think one of the things that you had said earlier in the discussion was interesting about how if that land had not been set aside for the Metroparks all those years ago, it would have been subdivisions today. So what are some of the lessons that can be taken from that original planning 80 years ago and how it's fast forwarded to today?
So I think the main lesson that can be taken from it is that it has to be intentional, and it has to be strategic, and it has to be across all party lines, right? We have to have this strong vision for our communities that is really invested in the communities themselves, not in something outside of that. And there has to be a commitment going forward, because it's hard. No property acquisition deal comes together in the blink of an eye. It takes place over years and decades. It takes place piece by piece, and requires a tremendous amount of forethought, and increasingly requires collaboration, right? We have to understand how it works both inside of our particular system and in connection to other systems. And so really at the core of it is that commitment, right? And that understanding and that support for those community assets, for something that is bigger and beyond us, and that we always consider in the context of equity, so that everyone has the same opportunities across borders.
And just another note on kind of how the process works on the front end in relation to this question about displacement. I think that the community engagement from the framework plan was so critical. And a lot of folks tend to talk about community engagement as something that you kind of like check the box on, right? But there was so much intentionality behind listening to what folks were saying and then actually carrying that out to figure out, okay, what are the things that we're going to do to implement in this first phase to actually show you that we're listening and to make that difference. So after the framework plan, kind of cobbling together that group of folks from, jobs and economy sector folks, the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, the Gilbert Family Foundation, all these people that had been, working on all of these projects in parallel and saying, can we center them around these geographic spaces? And that was a trust building exercise for residents to say, we heard you when you said displacement was a concern. And not only are we going to do the things to kind of lay out the long-term strategy to make sure that that doesn't happen, but in the meantime, you also see folks that are seeing kind of the opposite side of that, where they're thrilled to have this world-class asset in their backyard and are making investments in their own homes because they're so excited to now stay in their neighborhood that they were looking to get out of previously.
Yeah.
So.
And then there's, like for Detroit, there's, a Joe Louis Greenway planning study. That's also happening. That's really focused, hyper-focused on the economic development along this project. And then from that, it's talking about things like downzoning, right? What does it look like to ensure that our neighborhoods look like what we want them to look like? And so all of those things, small business opportunity, affordable housing. So, with this project again, we talk about why invest in public space, because the investment in public space is actually investment in all of these other things. It's just that this one thing allows you to anchor all those resources around.
And really, just, in the Metroparks, we're a fully developed system. But when we look at programming in the community, the people that we look for and look to for people who've built relationships and community trust and community engagement, these are the people that we look to. Really, between the city, the Riverfront, the Joe Louis Greenway project, there is nobody anywhere who does a better job, who has done a better job with that. We are incredibly grateful for that work and lucky to be able to be part of this larger ecosystem.
That's outstanding. All right, we got a lightning round here, just a few minutes left. So what are some resources available to urban settings combating environmental challenges like air pollution? Amy, I think you spoke about some of the interpretive program and education earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Visit our website, metroparks.com, click on programs, contact our interpretive division. We will come out, we will do a program for you, we will do a program with you, we will bring you into our parks. We are looking forward to meeting you.
All right, question for Joe Louis Greenway and Belle Isle Conservancy. Are there opportunities to use the parks to support stormwater infrastructure to reduce flooding in Detroit neighborhoods?
Yeah, it's already built into it, right? So that, yes. So the great thing about it, if you go down to the Joe Louis Greenway, that was a very critical part of building the Greenway, is how do we incorporate stormwater? So you'll see bioswales, you'll see that all along the trail. And the city was really thoughtful and intentional about using, vacant land bank owned properties to do some of this work. And so now there are these access points right next to your house. And so you have this bioswale. So all of those things are incorporated the entirety of that Conrail section.
Yeah. And for Belle Isle, we absolutely, every project that we carry out. So we just had a $12.5 million investment in the conservatory dome, which each of these takes, again, a tremendous amount of public support, but also private support to get done. For the aquarium is undergoing a $10 million HVAC project, but each of those has a stormwater component integrated into it to, again, make the island itself more resilient. And I will say, to the resources question too, we also operate the Belle Isle Aquarium. And so that's a place that we've had great partnerships over the years for ways to engage with DPSCD and all sorts of school kids and kind of build that connection to the environment and help understand it and make it kind of come alive for folks.
All right, last question, lightning round. What's a favorite memory that each of you has in someone else's space? So you can't cherry pick your own space. You got to think of someone else's. I'll start just to kick it off. I had my senior photos taken in Kensington Metropark back in the day, so that's a special one. Who else?
My favorite time on Belle Isle is, like, all of our family reunions were always on Belle Isle, so that's always my favorite.
One of my very dear friends was the director of Parks and Recreation for the city of Detroit many years ago. His name was Ernest Burkeen, and I remember the first time stepping on that island with him and his plans for the island, so many of which Meagan is bringing to fruition today.
For me, what is becoming the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Centennial Park, I lived around the corner from that for a very long time, and after I had my first son, I have 3 children, the first walk I took outside when I was able to walk was to that space, and you guys had just planted a small little grove of trees, so I found a little tree to be with my brand new newborn.
Incredible.
And that's forever a memory of mine that I just cherish.
Amazing. Well, let's give it up for our panelists here. One more time, I just want to thank the Kresge Foundation, and I want to end with the words, I think, Leona, was you that had said, connection to hope earlier in our conversation. So our space, our connection to hope, and also growth for our state and our region. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.